Hello, friends. I hope you're out wandering through nature, exploring the natural world around you. Do you enjoy writing about your wanderings? Nature journaling is an awesome, fun way to remember all the adventures you have taken and how you felt during those journeys. If you're looking for some beautiful journals to keep track of all your wanderings, I have several available on Amazon, including some guided journals for children. Start your journey in journaling by clicking on the link in the show notes. Keep exploring the nature around you and keep journaling all your wanderings. Hello, friends, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Paul, and yes, this is Nature Wanderer Podcast, and you may hear some running water in the background because today I want to talk a little bit about wetlands. Wetlands, lakes, creeks, streams, and I am in Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, New York, and where I'm at is actually where the waters come into daylight for Scajaquada Creek. And if you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, I'm going to explain it here. Scajaquada Creek actually runs through the city of Buffalo, New York, and Scajaquada Creek has quite a history. Back in the 1800s, Scajaquada Creek, this winding creek running through the city of Buffalo, and of course, people were not as environmentally conscious back then. So what they did, unfortunately, was they dumped all their garbage and sewage and all that into this creek. And of course, as developments kept expanding, houses, more people moving in, it's a city. What do you expect? People are going to move in. So as the developing kept moving on, they actually had to straighten out sections of the creek so that they could build roads and houses, but it still became quite a problem with pollution. Older cities you'll find in the United States actually had a combination of storm drains and sewers. So they were all in the same tunnels and the same lines. You have your storm drain, for those who don't know, where when the water gets high, we get heavy rains and it goes down into these storm drains and it flows out to wherever, a lake, a river, a stream. So some of these storm drains were going into Scajaquada Creek. Now, unfortunately, so are the sewers. If they were combined, newer cities, they actually separate them. But when you have heavy rains and you have a combined storm drain and sewer system, what happens is the water starts raising in these culverts and these tunnels, and so it's overflowing. And it overflows into, unfortunately, the streams and creeks. So Scajaquada Creek has had this bad history. And it was getting to the point where it was unsafe to live near Scajaquada Creek. That's how polluted it was. It was disgusting, and residents were in an uproar. It's like, well, you guys created this, but, they didn't get it back then. So what they did is back in 1921, they decided to cover Scajaquada Creek. Yeah, they built a tunnel around Scajaquada Creek. I should say over Scajaquada Creek. So Scajaquada Creek ran underneath the city. In other words, it's kind of like, hey, we got a problem, let's just hide it, we'll cover it up. Yeah, so it ran under Scajaquada Creek for about 3.7 miles until it got here to Forest Lawn Cemetery. And in Forest Lawn Cemetery, Scajaquada Creek once again gets to see daylight, and it meanders through Scajaquada Creek. Now, actually, getting a little bit away from the creek. I'm going to try to walk along the edge, but I'm going up a hill, so I'm going to be a little bit of a distance from it. And now you're going to start hearing, as I go towards the edge of the ravine here, you're going to hear some more water. And that water is actually what we call Serenity Falls. Now, it's not a huge waterfall. Okay, it's not one of these 20, 30-foot waterfalls. No, it's more of a cascading waterfall. And unfortunately, as I'm looking at it, I can see all the garbage in the water. There's looks like a 2x8, probably about 12 foot long, stuck in the middle of Serenity Falls. Whenever I hear the name of this falls, I always think of the Seinfeld episode with George Costanza's father. I can't remember his name right now, but Serenity now! So this waterfall, anyhow, Serenity Falls, it's a cascading falls. It runs for quite a ways here. And I'm going to be stepping away from it. I got to go around some trees here. And I'm going to head on down to the bridge because I want to talk a little bit more about Scajaquada Creek. But Scajaquada Creek, anyhow, has been polluted all this time, and for the past 20 years, they realize it's like, yeah, you can't fish in it, you can't, basically do anything in it. It's very unsafe to even, swim in it. So what they are trying to do is study what they can do to fix it, fix the issue, fix the problem. They do have several projects going on. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is actually starting, I think this year, maybe next year, they're actually going to start taking some of the actions that they have been studying and decided to do. So they're trying to get it back to a natural way. I mean, obviously, they're not going to rip out the tunnel. There's buildings on top of it. There's, parking lots, roads. So, yeah, they're not ripping that out. But the part of the Scajaquada that is open, they can start, repairing, putting it back to its natural way, letting it start to go to that meandering creek again. So I'm actually up on a ridge here. I'm headed on down towards river level. So I'm going to be walking all along the creek through the park, or cemetery. Sorry, I always consider this a park. It's amazing. Every time I come here, I do hikes here, walks with the general public throughout the summer. And so I'm always, thinking that I'm in a park because it's such a beautiful place. So yes, there are grave sites all around me, but it's so peaceful. Cemeteries are a wonderful place. Go back to my episode about, nature and cemeteries, and I talk a little bit more about it, but cemeteries are a wonderful place to study nature, to be with nature. It's very quiet and peaceful. You're surrounded by people, but they're not talking. Yeah, they're underground. This cemetery is used by hikers. I saw a runner go by just a few minutes ago. There's hikers in here all the time. Now I'm crossing the bridge. There's a bridge that crosses Scajaquada Creek at this point, and I can actually see Serenity Falls in the distance. And below Serenity Falls, down in the water, are some mallard ducks. It looks like 2 males and 2 females. And as I cross over to the other side, there is a heron, great blue heron in the water a little ways up. And there's a couple of Canadian geese. Now, on this side, as I'm looking on this side of the bridge, I'm seeing all these big boulders. There's boulders on the right-hand side that are kind of angled to divert the water. And then you'll see there's some more on the left-hand side, just a little ways up, that are doing the same thing, diverting the water. And then there's some a little further on the right, then a little further on the left. And yeah, so they're kind of zigzagging. And what it's doing, this is one of the systems that they put in place to get the Scajaquada back to the way it should be. These are making the stream go back and forth, which is what a stream should be doing. Now, unfortunately, throughout here, the banks of the stream are lined with these concrete boulders, blocks all along. I don't know if they're concrete. They may actually be stone. It looks like stone. But they're lining the entire creek here until you get up a little ways, and then they're just on the left-hand side. But what they're trying to do is create more habitat and create more flood. What's happening is, as it's diverting the water, it's leaving silt behind, especially in the springtime. It leaves silt behind in front of, or I should say behind, these boulder barriers, and that allows plants to start growing. And you'll get geese nesting in there. You'll get ducks nesting in these habitats. You'll get songbirds going there. I don't know if you can hear, I'm hearing lots of songbirds around me. I can hear the traffic a little bit too. I'm in the middle of a city, but I'm also hearing a lot of songbirds around me. So I'm going to move on here. I'm going to head into one of the restoration projects that has been going on. Many years ago, a group called Niagara Waterkeepers, they started to get involved. They kind of keep a watch on all the waterways in western New York, and what they do is they determine, whether this waterway is polluted, whether it needs help or not. And so they got involved in Scajaquada Creek. Thank goodness they did. They have a lot of pull in the area. They talk with the DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, with government agencies, and they get politicians involved. And what happens is they start to get things done here. And that's what they are doing, is they're getting things done. And this is what I'm walking up to right now, is one of the restoration projects that they did. And they basically planted all these plants in here. They asked the cemetery not to mow here. The cemetery is like 100% behind this, which is wonderful. The city of Buffalo is too. So they left this area unmowed. They put in some, got two geese flying over and the ones on the ground, the two geese on the ground, they're not happy. It's like they must have a nest around or something, but it's like, hey, this is our area. Get out of here. But anyhow, they put all these native species plants in. They leave it unmowed, natural. It attracts the wildlife to it. But more importantly, it also prevents flooding or controls the flooding. You have grasses in the water. You have plants in the water. It actually acts as a buffer, but it also helps to filter the water, make it cleaner. So I'm here at this area of the Scajaquada Creek where the Niagara Waterkeepers have built, where they have a restoration area, and it's like I have a great blue heron right in front of me. I have two geese and some goslings on the ground right in front of me. There's some more geese over there. And I have a mallard duck in the water. And it's all because they left this area unmowed. So the cemetery is working with them to keep it unmowed. And they can, basically the grasses get tall. It's great protection for the wildlife. You can hear the birds. They're enjoying this area. And so it's also flood control. So there's some walls up here, some stone walls that they built to keep the water back so it doesn't erode away the bank. But it also, with the plants, you have these roots in the ground. The more plants, the more roots, and the roots absorb. They absorb that water. So it controls the flooding in this area. Oh, I walked a little bit and they spooked up the goslings. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goslings with these 2 Canadian geese. Kind of awesome. Now, the water keepers did plant just native species over here, native species of plants. So it's a restoration area, and they did their research. Oh, the duck just took off, the mallard. They did their research and made sure that they did it properly. Oh, we have a killdeer here as well. Killdeer, they're a wetland species. They like the water usually along the edge of the water, and they like rocky areas as well. They build their nests in rocks. They almost look like rocks. They're eggs, so they kind of push the rocks aside. Maybe in your driveway, if you have a rock driveway, they'll push these little stones aside and creating a little cup area, and they lay their eggs in there, and their eggs look just like the rocks. And I've got a hawk flying over right now, red-tailed hawk. God, I love cemeteries. They're such peaceful places with the wildlife and all. So I've got all these different birds right around me here. But anyhow, so they build their nest, and then if a predator comes near, because they're in the open, they actually act like they have a broken wing, and they will go and walk away from the nest, hopefully drawing that predator towards them, thinking, oh, this is easy food, this guy is injured. And they'll go towards the mom or dad, and they're drawing them away from the nest is what they're doing, so that they don't hurt the babies or kill the babies or eat the eggs. So interesting species, the killdeer. So anyhow, I am down in this area where the creek actually bends, goes around a curve, and to control erosion, they actually did concrete the bank in this area. And opposite of the concrete side, all the deposits that are brought in through the springtime are actually deposited in this area here, creating a sandbank. And that's actually where the killdeer is hanging out right now. I'm watching them. And the sandbank has all these plants growing on it. So essentially, the river is creating its own habitat. So I should say creek, Scajaquada Creek. So that's what's going on here. And I'm going to head up to another section. I'm going to pause this so I can walk over there. So I am now at what's called Mirror Lake. Mirror Lake is a man-made lake. It's spring-fed. Usually spring-fed lakes are a little bit colder. It's probably, I'm going to guess, about 1.5 acres lake. There's a statue in the middle. It's a beautiful lake. It drains out into Scajaquada Creek, but it is spring-fed, so it's clean, clear water. There are fish in here. The fish can live in here. Not like Scajaquada Creek used to be, where you wouldn't get fish, but I mean now, because they have cleaned up Scajaquada Creek, at the last spot I was at, I mentioned that I was standing in front of a heron. Heron are fish eaters, so there's got to be fish in here, which is why you get the heron here. So it means that the water has been cleaned up somewhat. Not totally, but it's cleaner than it used to be. And the lake here, there's some geese here, there's some ducks. I'm seeing the swallows. Oh no, those are actually swifts. We got swifts here. I'm seeing the red belly on them now. The swifts are going over the lake. There's a killdeer over here too. I'm hearing them, but I don't see them. but the swifts are darting back and forth over the lake, and they are picking up insects. They're an insectivore. So they are grabbing insects in flight. So they fly over and they will catch these insects, mosquitoes or whatever, while they are in flight. So I'm going to head on further to the last part of our water adventure here at Forest Lawn Cemetery. And so I'm going to pause. It'll be probably about 10 minutes for me, 5-10 minutes, but for you, it's going to be instantaneously, so I'll be right back. So I'm at my final destination here in the cemetery, in Forest Lawn Cemetery, and this is actually an area where there used to be a small lake. They called it a lake. I would call it a pond, but that's how small. And over time, from silt and runoff, and it kind of got filled in, and it wasn't cared for. And so what they did is they took this area as part of the restoration. This just happened 2 years ago in 2022. The Niagara waterkeepers, with help from the cemetery and also from some government agencies and some other groups, they took this area and they turned it into a wetland. So they dredged out the lake, and now it's got this beautiful water in it. It doesn't look clear, but that's good habitat. We always think of, oh, I wouldn't swim in that. That must be a dirty water. It's like, no, that is good water for the animals, for the life around it. You're hearing a lot of red-winged blackbirds because I'm in a wetland area in the background. I got some geese here too, some mallard ducks just enjoying the day. But anyhow, so, I mean, the water is a little bit murky. This is spring-fed and runoff-fed. So what I mean by runoff-fed is the runoff from, I mean, there's hill around me. You're also going to hear a lot of traffic, so I'm right next to a highway that goes through the city of Buffalo. I mean, I'm right at the edge of the cemetery over here, and there's a highway, so you're going to hear traffic in the background also. But there's hills around me with grave sites up on the hillside, and you get the runoff, the water running down the hill, and it comes into here. But there's also this natural spring feeding it. And this drains off of one area. This entire lake here drains off, and it goes through a shallow area, a wetland area. Now this wetland has lots of cattails in it. I'm sorry guys, I know, I'm walking next to the geese and they're like, hey, we were just sitting here relaxing, what are you doing, dude? But anyhow, they have this area kind of meandering through. So this wetland, it's just filled with cattails. And of course, red-winged blackbirds love nesting in the cattails. And that's why we're hearing a lot of red-winged blackbirds. So this area here, what the cattails are doing in the wetland areas is filtering the water. So any of the runoff is going through here, and we have a major roadway up here, so you get oil and gas from unkept cars, getting on the roadside, the rubber from the tires, building up on the roadside, and eventually, it works its way down into the creek, but this filters it. Yeah, the wetland will filter it. The cattail roots will filter it. All the grasses and their roots, they will filter that water. So as it's running through here, it's filtering the water. Now that filtered water then ends up in Scajaquada Creek. So another way that it's purifying or cleaning the creek is this filtering through this wetland. And so this was a great project that they did. They put some bridges across the different parts of the wetlands so that people can enjoy it too. You always want to make sure that people can enjoy it and understand what they're doing. They put some great signage up here, so if you don't remember everything that I'm talking about, you can just come here and you can actually read it with all the signage. And there's a great sign about the Scajaquada Creek restoration. There's also signage about the wetlands. So they did a very good job of doing this. But this is what they needed to do to get, at least part of the creek cleaned up. So Scajaquada Creek used to be where you wouldn't want to go anywhere near it. You definitely wouldn't want to, eat any fish out of it. You wouldn't want to swim in it. But, now it's to the point where it's cleaner. I'm not going to say clean. There are still pollutants in it. There's still some of the sewage that still gets in it. Not as much as it used to, but there is still some sewage. So this is helping. Not the total cure, not the total solution, but it is helping. And this is what we need to do to help our wetlands, to help our rivers, help our creeks. Our ancestors, they didn't know any better. I'm not blaming them, but because they didn't know any better, they just didn't take care of nature. Nowadays, we know better, and yet still I see people not taking care of nature, not taking care of the planet. I still see pollutants in ponds and lakes and rivers and creeks. I see people dumping stuff. I hate seeing, when I'm driving down the road and I'm following a pickup truck and garbage comes flying out of the back of the pickup truck. It's like, it's open. Why'd you put your garbage in there? But that's just one of my pet peeves. But we know better, yet we still don't take care of things. So I'm so glad this is one of those places where they are trying to make a difference. They are trying to correct the wrongs that humans have made. So if you ever get a chance, I really encourage you, come over here to Forest Lawn, just go hiking through the cemetery, and come up, and they have benches here at the wetlands so you can just sit and enjoy listening to the birds. Unfortunately, like I said, there is a expressway here, but so anyhow, if you want to just sit here and relax, great place to come. So I encourage you to do that. Come to Forest Lawn Cemetery. If you get here in the spring, you might be able to catch a walk with me through the cemetery. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed learning about the wetlands, rivers, lakes in Forest Lawn Cemetery here in the city of Buffalo, New York. And don't forget, all the links are in the show notes to any extra information that I have for you. Also, if you want to support the podcast, I just put some of my Patreon, which I'm phasing out my Patreon. I'm going with Ko-Fi only for donations soon. But I have some of the videos I have made, some of the virtual hikes that I have made. I have opened those up to the general public now, so they are, free on my YouTube channel for you to see. So check those out. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast, subscribe on my YouTube channel. This summer I'm going to be putting a lot more on my YouTube as well. So make sure you subscribe to that. I have nature journals available if you want to journal your wanderings through nature. And don't forget, next time, bring a friend with you. Yeah, bring a friend, introduce the podcast to them, make sure they subscribe as well. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and don't forget, keep exploring the nature around you.
Did you know that plastic is made with oil, a fossil fuel that pollutes the environment? And did you know that only about 15% of all plastic is recycled into new products? Wouldn't it be awesome if we could live our lives without plastic so that we could stop harming the planet? Well, there's a company that wants to help you do just that. Life Without Plastic sells products that will reduce or eliminate your dependence on plastic. They have a large selection from toothbrushes to food storage containers to drinking straws, all plastic free. And it's reasonably priced. So what are you waiting for? Check out all these great plastic-free products and help save the planet. Just click on the link in the show notes to find out more and to start your journey to being plastic-free.